Hi, I'm Alex Howard, and Hi, I'm Alex Howard, and in this video, I just wanted to talk a little bit about my own background with psychology, really how my journey started, and what I'm most passionate about in terms of teaching this material, but also working with my own private clients as well. So my journey with psychology really started growing up in, I think the technical term is a dysfunctional family situation. Certainly a number of quite challenging events in my early life, both in terms of within my own family, being bullied at school, and really just struggling to find a way to be in the world and be happy, which is ultimately what I think most of us want to have in our life. And then around the age of 15, 16, I developed ME chronic fatigue, which was a 7-year, very challenging but also incredibly rewarding journey of my own self-development and I guess ultimately my own healing. And about probably only 4 or 5 months into first having symptoms of ME chronic fatigue, I was sent to see a counsellor. And I remember at that time being totally resistant. Totally like, what the hell is this? I'm being asked to talk about my thoughts and my feelings, but I have a real physical illness. And I remember that the focus of the counselling sessions was that I was going out and drinking alcohol with my teenage friends. I was like 16 at the time. And the focus of the counselling sessions was to try and get me to drink less alcohol with my friends, which basically felt like a judgment of the counsellor towards my behaviour as a teenager, as opposed to any kind of real exploration of my kind of inner world and inner psychology. And another couple of years really passed, and if anyone had mentioned that there was a psychology role to ME chronic fatigue, it was one of the few things that made me get energy that I wanted to somehow rearrange their face, that it just didn't resonate. It didn't feel true for me. And then I reached a point where I just felt like I couldn't continue with my life the way that it was. And it's a long story that I wrote about in my first book. But basically I was helped to recognize that if I wanted my life to be different, I was going to have to be different. And I had to eat some humble pie and really start to explore the idea that what was happening in my mind and my emotions and feelings actually could be affecting my body and could be affecting ultimately my health and my life. And I started to read some books on healing, meditation, yoga, psychology. I started meditating every day, started practicing yoga every day, and really went on a 5-year path of what very quickly became for me a borderline obsession with psychology. And the kind of funny thing was that I'd had that initial experience seeing a counsellor where I felt totally resistant and completely like it wasn't something that I was into, to at the age of 18, discovering that psychology was the first thing that I realized I truly, truly loved. It's like I suddenly was reading what became hundreds of books around psychology, and it was like I was reminding myself of things that I somehow already knew. And I did a degree in psychology, which was kind of fascinating in the sense that I thought what I was going to be studying was a thing that I was passionate about, and what I realized what I was studying was basically mental dis-ease. Not how can we heal, not how can we change our life, but basically studying the problem. So I had this kind of weird life while I was at university, that I was doing the traditional psychology training, but in the kind of evenings and weekends, I was reading all of these books around NLP, hypnotherapy, meditation, psychotherapeutic techniques, and I fell in love. It became my passion, it became an obsession. I started doing all kinds of courses and workshops, and I'd go along to these workshops at 18, 19 years old. I'd normally be the only guy, I'd be the only person under about 35, 40, and I had this illness that I was ashamed of at the time and struggling with, but I was just so passionate to learn these ideas. And when I finished at my psychology degree, I'd also completed a 1-year training in hypnotherapy, NLP, life coaching. And as I was completing that training, my teacher asked me if I wanted to go and work with him in his clinic as an apprentice. So I had this amazing opportunity at 22. I just turned 22 actually at that time, to go and be a therapist, which was totally extraordinary. It's like I'd open the door, people thought I was a receptionist. And you see this kind of look on their face of slight horror that I was the person they were going to have to talk to about the problems in their life. And that was definitely a challenge that I had to be a lot better than an average practitioner to justify the fact that I was so young. But I totally and utterly loved it. I was obsessionally passionate about understanding people, helping people. And after about a year working in the clinic I was working, my own private practice outside the clinic was bigger than the one in the clinic. And so I left the clinic to see my own private clients. Ended up setting up the Optimum Health Clinic, which is a whole long story in of itself, a 10-year journey of building one of the world's leading integrative medicine clinics. But right through that process have really continued this just absolute fascination with people. How do we create our experience of the world? How do we project that onto the world around us? And how do we ultimately change that? You know, how do we create healing, but also how do we create real deep transformation? And one of the things that I'm so passionate about the conscious psychology training program that we run is not just the fact that I believe we're training some of the best practitioners in the country, but also the fact that we absolutely insist on people's own inner development as part of that process. Because I genuinely believe that the best practitioners are those that have really, really lived and integrated the tools and the techniques. Because then you're not just talking theoretically, you're talking from your own lived experience. And it's been an amazing journey over the years teaching. It's now over a decade that we've been teaching this practitioner training program, and seeing students go from having their own inner path to learning these tools to actually going out and seeing them thrive working with other people, building their own organizations, building their own private practices. And really, I guess if I was to say anything about kind of what this work means to me, it really is the potential that we all have inside of us for our lives to be different. I think we can get so used to, and our culture can support it, to accepting just things being the way that they are, us being the way that we are, and just being used to it. And I look back on my life over the last 16 years that I've been on this intense path of inner development, and the amount of things that are different, both in terms of how I experience myself, how I see the world, my relationships, my intimate relationship, in fact, even be able to have an intimate relationship that's loving and deep and lasting, seeing that in other people as well, having been so privileged to work with literally thousands of people over the last kind of 12 years or so, that we all have a remarkable potential. And it is such a joy to be able to work with other people, to be able to support them in discovering that inside of themselves, especially in a context where they're going to go out and work with other people. So there's a lot more that I could say about my background and my journey with these tools, but I think really that's the essence of it, that I love seeing the potential that we all have to create change in our lives.